Hey everyone, welcome back to Nat Joe's Caffeinated Library. We're finally getting to a review video. I know it's been a minute. Sorry. I'm trying to move between selling a house and buying a house. It's been a bit stressful, but we're finally getting to it. We're going to be reviewing Kristen Britain's newest Winterlight book. So anybody who knows even a little bit about my channel or me knows that I'm obsessed with this author. She's probably she's probably number one in my list of like authors that I freaking love. Her series, the Green Rider series, I've been following it since I was in junior high. It's just, Harry Potter is to some people what this book is to me, right? So this is just like my series. So Winterlight, this is a hefty, this is the newest book in the series. There's only one more after this, and I'm kind of heartbroken about that. So yeah, let's get into it. Winterlight. So for those of you who don't know, Green Rider is a long series. This is the seventh book in the series. There's 8, and then she's done. So Green Rider, so it follows the main character, Kerrigan Gladian, I think, where she is a Green Rider, which is like a messenger service for the king. And they all have these little brooches that allow them to use their magic. Because you can use magic in this world, but like it's faded out of the world to the point where unless you have like this little brooch that allows it to come out, you can't really use it without the brooch kind of thing. So she has this ability to fade out, to kind of like become invisible a little bit. And so it kind of follows her. There's a evil dude who was trapped, who's been trapped, and he's coming back now. I'm trying not to spoil the series too much while still explaining what it's about without being super confusing. So there's a dude who waged war against this country and its people hundreds of years ago. He was trapped. Now he's coming back and he's trying to like finish what he started, kind of like. Yeah, that's like the short version of what this series is about. There's a lot more to it, but to go into a long, in-depth description of that, I might as well just do a series review, and that's not what this video is. If you want me to do a series review, let me know and I'll do it. So Winterlight picks up right at the end of the last book, Firebrand. Poor Kerrigan went through some stuff in Firebrand, which was actually something I enjoyed the most about this book, I think, because the main character, spoiler and trigger warning, I guess, is like super tortured in the last book. She gets whipped really bad. Kind of picture Jamie from Outlander. So she goes through some stuff in the beginning, well, throughout the whole book of Firebrand. She goes through some stuff. And so a lot of what I was really looking forward to in this book was how she deals with that. Because I feel like in fantasy books, there's not a lot of like consequences to what happens to the people, right? Like, especially in young adult fantasy and a lot of adult fantasy too, like the characters go through some stuff. Like they get tortured, they have horrible injuries happen to them, they see a lot of shit. But they don't really ever kind of like follow that through with the trauma that would actually give a person. And Kristen Britain, I feel like this entire book was a very good representation and real life, realistic showing of what a person goes through when they have had trauma. Poor Kerrigan in this book. Oh man, you just want to give the poor girl a hug. She did a great job showing what PTSD and trauma and just trying to deal with a lot of traumatic crap has done to a person. Like, you really can see that in Kerrigan and her character development. I wouldn't say she's a different person, but she's kind of a different person. Going through that level of stuff that this character has gone through, it would change who you are a little bit, and I feel like the author has done a really great job showing how that would change a person. Like, you're still who you are, but you're kind of not. Like, you've lost a little part of who, like, your innocence and your naivety and some of the lightheartedness. Some of that kind of goes away when you've experienced really horrible trauma like this character has, and she does a remarkable job of demonstrating that, which I was just like, thank you. I appreciated it so much. So this book also is so there's like a war that's been brewing throughout this entire series. There's a group called the Second Empire, which is kind of like the descendants of this invading force from hundreds of years ago, right? So they've kind of like regrouped and they've decided to try to help their leader, Master Person, take over again. So that's kind of been brewing in the background for all of the other books, and this is the one where the battle really kind of like comes out. So this book is there's a lot of action in this book. Like, I think the first, I don't even know, 10 pages, Kerrigan's already in the shit again and something's happened to her. So it's just action point, action point, action point, action point. I was feeling a little exhausted with the character towards the middle of the book because none of us get a break. There's a lot of action built into this book. Part of me wishes this book had been split into two, because there were some aspects that felt not rushed, but they could have been fleshed out just a little bit more. And some of the action could have maybe been built up a little bit more and then fully developed, and a little bit less of like one after another after another. Like, it was just, like, I wouldn't say the book was flawed in the way it was paced, but I mean, she's thick, guys. This book is the thickest book. It is 800, not including the acknowledgement, 836 pages long. Part of this is me being selfish and not wanting the series to end, but the other part of me as a reader kind of wished that maybe before the final battle scene, because the book progresses through several different battles, and the final one is the battle for the castle, where they've basically been besieged. Part of me wishes the book had ended just prior to that, and fleshed that out more in a second book, and then just kind of allowed this book to stand on its own a little bit. I wouldn't say the battle scenes were rushed, because they didn't feel rushed, but at the same point, they kind of felt a little rushed. I don't know if that's making any sense, but like, I keep kind of comparing it to like the Lord of the Ring trilogy and how the final movie, I can't remember what it's called, my wife's gonna kill me. The one with the ghosts at the end, right? Like, that whole battle is basically one movie. And I kind of felt like that's what that final battle scene in this book needed to be. Like, it was like the fight of the book. They're fighting for the castle, they're fighting for their king, they're fighting for their people, their seat of power is besieged. And not that it's over really quickly, but it was kind of over a little too quickly. Like, for the build-up that it did give us, I felt like the battle should have not necessarily been harder, but a little bit more fleshed out and developed. It felt very superficial in some of the fight scenes. Like, there's a bunch of planning that happens involving like a dam that they burst to give them the edge in the fight, kind of like they turn the battlefield into a giant swamp. And I kind of wish I had seen a little bit more of that, because that kind of like happened and then it was gone, and I was like, oh, that was not nearly as important as I thought it was going to be, because I had no stage time. So that was I think if there was anything that I disliked about the book, it would be that. I think it would have benefited from being split into two and giving the final battle scene the full fleshed out, like, true build-up fight that I felt like it deserved. It felt a little quick for it being like the main fight of this series. Like, okay, not the main fight of the series. They still have to fight the big baddie, and that's going to be the next book. But like, you know, in the Lord of the Rings, where you had like the fight for Helm's Deep. The fight for the people that lived in the mountain, wherever Helm's Deep, is that what it's called? The big fight when the ghosts come. That place. It's the fight for that place, and then they still have to fight. Wow, no names. Sauron, right? So like, the last book that she's writing is the Sauron fight, but this book really was like the final fight with Rohan, the Rohan people. I don't know them. God, wow. I do like the show. I do watch it. I just can't ever remember any of the people's names. I felt like it just needed a little bit more. Well, I did like about the different battles is that she does keep it pretty realistic. Like, you get, like, they talk a lot about the like logistics of trying to move and feed an army and getting it, like, a lot of the book is spent getting the king's army from the castle to this other location, and then realizing that the army is already to the castle and then having to go back, basically. And she does all of that in a way that's very like realistic without being tedious. So I mean, while I'm harping on the battles, it actually, like, it wasn't done poorly. It was done very well. That was me being a little nitpicky, because I just want a little bit, I want more. And this series is like my life. So the other big thing that this book does, oh man, this is going to be, so if you haven't read this book yet, spoiler beyond spoilers on this section, okay, for the little romantic subplot. So there's a romantic subplot in this book between the main character and the king, and it is my ship, okay? Like, if I could, it is the ship that I ship and will continue to ship all of my life. These two need to be together so badly, and this entire series has been like the most painful, reluctant, slow burn, denied love trope series ever. And it all kind of comes to a head in this book. Don't know how I feel about how it came to a head, but we're going to get into some spoilery discussions of that. So the king and Kerrigan. It becomes pretty obvious pretty early in the series that there's like some sparks there, right? And then it has the whole like she can't marry him because she's a commoner, and then he ends up getting married to somebody else and has a queen, so there's a whole bunch of like problems in the way. At one point, Kerrigan makes a very specific declaration in one of the other books where she's basically like, I'm not going to be your mistress, so stop fucking asking me, right? Which is one of the things I really enjoy about Kerrigan and the way that her character is written, is that she's got very strong morals, but she also dips into the gray area on a lot of things. But this is the one thing where she's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be the thing that wrecks your family. Like, your wife's technically my friend. Like, we were friends before this happened, so I'm not going to do that. And then this book kind of ends in a weird unanswered gray area that makes me wonder if that has gone out by the wayside, and I'm just really confused. So there's a lot, like their feelings for each other are a lot more present and open in this book from what they've been in all the other books. Like, usually it's like a hidden stolen glances kind of thing, but now they're basically almost flirting with each other, and it was just, I love it, but it was also such a weird shift in the way their relationship has been handled previously. But I also kind of get it, because like the stuff that Kerrigan is going through mentally, she's also kind of in like a fuck it mentality a little bit. And so I understand and I kind of appreciate the shift that their relationship has taken. So the book ends with the queen, Astora, basically figuring it out. Like, she's already known that those two were in love, just not, I don't think, to the point at which they were. And then some stuff happens where she basically, it gets laid out in front of her how in love those two are and basically how miserable they are trying to stay separate. So she, at the end of the book, gives them their blessing to like, you do you, just like without like, basically she's like, be discreet and don't be hoeing it out in everybody's public life, right? And before the king and Kerrigan can have a conversation about what that means for them and how they're going to move forward with that, they get interrupted again, and like this entire series is a series of cockblocks for those two, and it kills me. But the book ends without ever really touching on that again, and I don't know. If I were to say another thing that I didn't like about this book was the amount of open ends that they, for it being the last book in the series, nothing's been resolved at all. Like, the plot between the big baddie is still open. Like, a bunch of subplots kind of get thrown in, and those kind of get wrapped up, but like, those subplots really didn't do anything for the overarching plot. Like, with the battle with the Second Empire, like, that kind of comes up, gets dealt with, goes away, but it did nothing to affect the main battle that's coming. And so there's just a lot of open threads, and the way they're addressing their relationship is one of them. I wanted a little bit more, not necessarily, like, you didn't even need to tie it up and like give me what they're going to do, but just, it was so open. Like, they had one conversation and then they're never addressing it again, and then the book just kind of ends. Overall, I would definitely say this book is my favorite of the series. I still wish it had been split into 2 books, and some of the stuff that's in this one had been fleshed out a little bit more. Like, there's a lot of sub characters that get introduced, like the Red Lions, which is like the elite guard of the big baddie way back before, that they've like resurfaced, and there was very little reference to them before. I don't know, there's a lot of stuff that was introduced. So I would say I mean, this is definitely my favorite book of the series. It's still my favorite series. Still wish that it had been split in half and kind of just some elements fleshed out a little bit more, and then given more to the ending and to that final battle, because it felt, by the time we got to the end, it was like, and we're done. Like, it rushed very quickly, but not in a way that it made me sit there and go, wow, that was rushed. It was just like, hindsight, looking back, there's things I wish that there was more of. things that we had a little bit more build up to. But while I read it, at no point did I feel like it was rushed. It was just a really great read. I blazed through this thing in like 2.5 days. My entire outside life paused, and then I was in a book hole that's I still haven't recovered from. So, I mean, overall, still it's a 5 out of 5. I still absolutely love this book. I just wish there was a little bit more. And I mean, it's the second to last book in the series that I love and adore, and so of course I'm going to want more. So part of that also just might be me not wanting it to end, because I know the next book is it. I know that she's contracted with Daw to do 2 more books in the world, but not in the same storyline. I suspect it's going to be about Captain Mapstone, because she gets kidnapped really early on in the morning, and then she just is like yeeted out of the story. And she's never really referenced again, which hurts me because I love Captain Mapstone. She's one of my favorites. But the way that her story went, and like the build-up that her subplot line has been going in the last couple books, I suspect the 2 books that she's going to write, the author's going to write after the conclusion, I bet you it's going to be the story about Captain Mapstone. That's just my guess, just based on the way the plot lines are going, because I can't, unless the next book is like 1,200 pages long, I can't see Kristen Britain dedicating the amount of pages needed to do her rescue story justice without sacrificing the main plot line. So that's why I suspect that that's going to be what the next 2 books are about, and that Captain Mapstone doesn't get, like, her story doesn't get resolved in the main book. That would be my suspicion. But I really can't wait to see how the book wraps up in the next one. There's a lot of unanswered questions, like I was saying, like what the king and Kerrigan are going to be doing about their relationship. There's some weird stuff going on with the queen, like she's showing hints of plant magic and stuff that hasn't been seen with her before, and there's a weird emphasis on it that makes me suspicious. The Fedoros, the centaur people that were dealt with in the other books, they didn't come up. They're going to be relevant to the final battle. The Elations are doing like a weird behind-the-scenes maneuvering that I think is going to be super relevant in the next book. And then there's the dragons that got introduced in 2 books ago. The dragons were introduced. There was a bunch of side chapters with those group of characters, and that's going to be, it's going to be super relevant in the next book. I just can't decide what side of the fight they're going to end up on. There's like 5 or 6 really decent plot lines that all are going to have to come together in the next book. And I mean, I trust the author to do it, because she's proven to be very good at weaving together plot lines in other, like, the way that she's weaved and included, like, she's dropped hints of stuff in other books that have, like, come out to be super relevant in later books. So she's really good at the long con planning. So I trust that she's going to be able to weave everything together really well. But Lord, it's a lot of shit she's got to weave together, and I just can't wait to see what's going to happen. And it's going to be like another 3 years before the next one comes out, and it's going to kill me, guys. But thanks for watching my little review. It's not really little anymore. Thanks for watching my review of Winterlight. This was by far my most anticipated book of 2021. I had this pre-ordered 7 months. Literally the second it came available for pre-order, I had it pre-ordered. So, I mean, I adore the series. I adore this book. I love the author. I will probably cry when the book series is over, because this series has just gotten me through a lot. That was Winterlight. Those are my thoughts and feelings without being too, I didn't want to ruin this plot too much for people who want to read it. If you guys want me to go more in depth about the different plot lines and do like a full spoilery breakdown of the book, I totally will. I didn't want to ruin some of the good surprises if y'all haven't read it yet, because they're good. Anyway, let me know your thoughts, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one. Hopefully it's not so few and far between, but it probably will be, because I'm moving, so I'll do my best. Sorry, folks.